Hi. Sorry. Hi. My name is Vincent, and I was diagnosed with autism, or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, at 2 years old. I am now 18, and this is my story. A very common stereotype for those in the spectrum is that we hate eye contact. The constant social desire to look directly, but not too directly, at the person we are talking to when having a conversation. Again, it may differ depending on the severity and the specifics of the case, but for me, I think it might be helpful to visualize for a moment everyone's eyes as a pair of spotlights. Where the light hits is what they can see, and if you're in the light, you're expected to shine back. This serves a purpose, of course, to dignify the other person and reassure them that you are, in fact, still listening. Almost all social situations necessitate some eye contact, or else, are you even really having a conversation? This is more of an expectation than anything else. And when people with ASD don't always meet that expectation, the natural response can range anywhere from confusion to resentment and even offense. Perhaps those with ASD do want to have a conversation, but would rather not be presenting all of their ideas as if they were performing for the other person. Often in life, the symptoms of autistic neurodivergence must be hidden away from society, if at all possible. Many on the spectrum refer to this as masking. And I've certainly masked. I've certainly masked plenty of times. In a way, I've lived my entire life with some kind of mask on. That's how I am able to approach a mostly neurotypical stream of thought. I'm sure I'm not the only one. The point I'm trying to make here is this. There are times where being in the spotlight is not only necessary, but also empowering. Like performing in a theater or giving a presentation that you know top to bottom, that you truly believe in. But that isn't all of the time. For many on the spectrum, those moments are few and far between. Because nobody wants to be suddenly thrust into the spotlight when they've forgotten their lines. When somebody tells me to maintain eye contact, I immediately feel a sense of authority looming over me from that person. It's not very conducive to a productive conversation when I feel like the other person is expecting some certain behavior of me and is willing to set me straight by force to see it manifest. I don't always want to be performing. Sometimes what I have to say is private, undeveloped, embarrassing, the list goes on. I should have the freedom to look at you when I want to, and to stare off in the distance when not. Of course, sometimes that looming feeling of authority is intentional, kind of, at least. Like in a job interview, or that presentation example I gave before. I've never been to a job interview. I'm sure you can tell. But I know how they work. It is, right now, one of the major barriers to me entering the workforce officially. If I have a solid resume, a dependable personality, and say all of the right things, but I just so happen to not look my interviewer in the eyes while doing so, what is the possibility that I might just lose the job right then and there, saying that I was distracted? Except, no, I wasn't distracted. I wasn't distracted at all, actually. I was listening. Fun fact, you don't need your eyes to listen. You don't. But at that point, the bridge has been burned. I must look for employment elsewhere. That's a problem, right? A serious problem. In extreme cases, conversations with impatient, let's say neurotypical, so basically normal people, expecting constant or even just basic eye contact, it can feel like being in a hostage situation. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but, it feels like that sometimes. Having to specifically focus on maintaining eye contact distracts from that cohesive train of thought we all seek. And as such, it can easily derail a conversation faster than it can improve one. Personally, the only thing more distracting than being watched while I talk is having to stare back at you while I'm doing it. It's tough enough being under a spotlight, but to have to reciprocate that it's not difficult in the way that we usually think of difficult as being difficult, but it's definitely troublesome, especially when I'm more focused on talking to you rather than, the way I'm appearing to you. So perhaps, if you ever see someone rambling on in a dialogue, like I happen to be, and they happen to not be looking at you often, or ever, it may be more of a sign that they are feeling vulnerable, and that they trust you with what they have to say. If you are willing to look past this inconvenience, you may learn things about the speaker that would otherwise remain unsaid. Perhaps not everyone need be under the spotlights, nor need to reciprocate, when they are more focused on giving you insight rather than giving you eyesight. 7 minutes. 7.5 minutes. I'll take it.
There's a Good Doctor. That's an excellent series. There's some Netflix shows that I've seen. There's Atypical. There's As We See It, which is actually on Amazon Prime. As We See It, it's about a group of young adults on the spectrum who room together. Atypical is about a college student with AS and his family dynamics. Then there's Love on the Spectrum, sort of a dating show, both the Australian version and the American version. I also would recommend something that's not autism related, but disability related. And that's in terms of a movie, a Netflix documentary called Crip Camp, which is features disability activist Judy Heumann.
Hey everyone, this is Kerry Magro. I'm autistic and have dysgraphia, and today I'm a professional speaker. I'm really, really excited to be here with all of you. Gyasi Burks-Abbott is a incredible human being, first and foremost, but he's also a writer, public speaker, and autism self-advocate. In addition to serving on countless boards, committees, and commissions of several autism and disability organizations, Gyasi is on the faculty of the LEND, which is also known as the Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities program at Boston's Children's Hospital and UMass Boston's Institute for Community Inclusion. He's contributed to and written articles for such publications as the Autism in Adulthood Journal and the Developmental Disabilities Network Journal as well. He graduated from, so you're going to kill me for this, but Macalester College in St. Paul, hopefully I got that right, Minnesota, with a BA in English and psychology. And he has an MS in Library and Information Science from Simon's University in Boston. And recently, Gyasi published a book, which I had the opportunity to talk to him about quite recently, about his life, called My Mother's Apprentice and Autistic's Rites of Passage. And he currently lives today in Bedford, Massachusetts. Gyasi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks.
So one of the big things I wanted to ask you, sir, is obviously you have a tremendous background in discussing caretakers and caregivers and the importance of supporting the autism community. What are some things, and maybe just to kind of change it up a bit, maybe like what are 5 things that caretakers may want to consider when supporting an autistic loved one across the lifespan?
I guess one thing I would suggest is like I think of when I was diagnosed. I wasn't diagnosed until I was right before my 18th birthday. And a psychiatrist I was seeing at the time suggested that I benefited from having a late diagnosis because I was basically treated like a normal child. I mean, at the time I was still bitter, so I couldn't have disagreed with him more because I was still bitter about the misunderstanding. But over the years, I've come to think that he might have had a point. And I think, I try to look for maybe there's a Goldilocks principle where we start with an understanding of autism, that the person has autism so that there aren't so many recriminations and misunderstandings. But we use that as a floor, not a ceiling. And so that we don't prevent the kid from having as normal life as possible. Now, we recognize that, they're autistic, but for instance, they still might benefit from what other kids would benefit from, extracurricular activities, even if they're not designated as autism extracurricular activities. In essence, try to give them as normal life as possible. And even in terms of their behavior, consider that, as a caretaker, you probably know them very intimately. And even if you don't have the autism jargon to explain why they're doing something that they're doing, you know them as a person. And you might know that, oh yeah, he doesn't like this, or he does like that, or this is how he reacts to that, Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the idea of the Goldilocks principle too. That's just a cool way of expressing it. And another very interesting expression, not necessarily expression, something that you worked on very closely on for a little bit is Nick's Law. And I would just love for you to tell the people who might be watching at home what Nick's Law is and how you got involved.
Nicky's Law is a great example of what happens when a regular citizen sees something and decides to take action. Nicky's Law is basically, it's a registry of caretakers who work in, let's say, group homes or institutions that have been substantially found to abuse the people they're taking care of. But it hasn't risen to the level of criminal prosecution. And what tends to happen, this is what Nikki's mother, Cheryl, discovered when her son Nicky was abused, is that the caretaker can just sort of get a job at another agency. And one of the things she discovered is that this was in Massachusetts. There are other states would have registries which require any organization to look at the registry, and if they find a name on the registry, they can't hire that person. So Cheryl contacted her legislator and basically started to lobby the state house to get this law passed. It took a few years, and I was happy to join the cause, but later in the process, and by going to a rally at the state house, posting on Facebook, contacting my legislators, and encouraging my friends to contact theirs, to give my voice to what seemed like an important cause, and but eventually the law was passed. It was actually signed by the governor right before the pandemic hit. It was one of the last things we did in person. And so it's an example of what can happen when an ordinary citizen sees something and decides they're going to take action.
That's so cool. Now, to your knowledge, is there anything like a Nicky's Law in other states as well, or is it just in Massachusetts?
No, there are some other states. I'm not sure which ones, but there are registries in other states. And that's one of the things that Cheryl was working off of when she decided to get it instituted in Massachusetts.
How can people learn more about you after they jump off this interview today? What are your social media handles, and how are some ways that people can learn more about you?
Well, I am on Facebook. You can just use my name to search me. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't use it that much, but I use it sometimes. Google, if you Google me, a couple of things might come up. A couple of blog posts I've made. couple of presentations I've given. Also, reading my book would be a good idea. Also, I recently an article for the Autism and Adulthood Journal, an article I recently wrote, which published actually in August, on being Black and autistic. It's called a theory of mind spelled MINE, my perspective on perspective taking.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. And again, for all of you watching at home, my name is Dr. Kerry Magro, professional speaker. I'm also autistic, and this is Stories from the Spectrum, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.
Hi, I'm Spencer Griffin.
And I'm Sparrow Dena.
I'm here to talk about and play my latest single, If You're the One I Really Want. This is a duet I did with Sparrow, and basically this song is about like two people, hypothetical relationship or friendship. It's kind of up to the viewer, listener, to decide what that would be. And like they don't know whether they want to be with each other or not. And a lot of the song sort of uses opposites deliberately in each verse. Want to say a few things about it?
Yeah, it's a deliberate use of opposites. It's a fun time, and it's a good one to make you give a second thought to what you're doing in the moment.
Indeed it is. Without further ado, here is If You're the One I Really Want. Wanna come over for some classic cartoons and chill. After that we can wax philosophical over Tom Waits records. We can have a contest over who can make the goofiest joke. And they'll make fun of ourselves if we can't think of anything better. Oh, I can't decide what to do. I feel over the moon with you, but you also make me sick. I wonder what will do the trick to make you see that I want you. Though I don't know if it's true, if you're the one I really want in my life.
Like a child, I'll trust in everything you say. Even though I feel sometimes like the world has broken all my trust. And though at first I might seem normal and that I've got a name,
Yeah.
deep inside my confidence is crumbling to
Oh,
dust.
I can't decide what to do. I feel over the moon with you, but you also make me sick. I wonder what will do the trick to make you see that I want you. Though I don't know if it's true, if you're the one I really want in my life. Like a square peg in a round hole, there's no place that I feel like I truly fit. There's no thing I'll give up on, even though sometimes I feel I'd like to quit. Just give me a chance. Soon enough you'll find out. Maybe I'm really worth it after all. People say I don't take anything too seriously, but every day I wonder if life has any meaning at all. And though I've risen above everyone's expectation, seems like any moment all my hopes could take a fall. Oh, I can't decide what to do. I feel over the moon with you, but you also make me sick. I wonder what will do the trick to make you see that I want you, but I don't know if it's true, if you're the one I really want in my life. If you're the one I really want in my life.
everyone, my name is Alex Lin. Today I'm talking about the importance of inclusion and the story of inclusion. When I was younger, I was just a kid on the spectrum. I didn't know I was on a spectrum, but I was on a spectrum. The point of the story is that inclusion changed my life. When people who don't have autism included me into their social circles, it opened my mind, it brightened my horizons, and it helped me learn how to make more friends. And the most important part is when people like you who don't have autism open your heart and mind to people with autism, they're more receptive towards you and loving towards you. And that's the most touching part about the autism neurotypical relationship, is that, like, you know, both sides are reciprocated very well, and if they reciprocate like each other, then it's great. And that's how it's gonna make the society a better place for everyone, and a more equal place for people on the spectrum, and a better place for people on the spectrum. And it's very important because when I was included, I learned so much. I learned about different topics. I learned about communication. I learned about the mannerism in communication with neurotypicals. And I learned about the importance of minding people's boundaries, and also and creating a balance between minding people with boundaries and also keeping my original qualities of my autism intact, so I don't have to compromise myself at the same time, but not and at the same time not crossing other people's boundaries. So I think it's very important that we talk about that, you know, because not everyone's going to accept people like us. And they should. But unfortunately, that's not the case in the real world. But my point is, inclusion is very important, because with inclusion, we can unite as one to understand each other better. And with inclusion comes a lot of responsibility, including from the neurotypical side. If you don't include people with autism, you'll not learn a different side of humanity and other people. And if you do, you'll not regret it, because you'll get to learn more about the autism condition, about so much with autism, and it'll also broaden your horizons, your neurotypical horizons, and what is considered normal and unnormal, you know, because there's no such thing as being normal. Everyone's different in the end of the day. It's just a label we put on each other, and you'll learn that people with autism are no different than you. We want love, acceptance, and inclusion, and if you give us those things, we will reciprocate in the end, even though we don't seem like we're the reciprocal type of people. We're people that reciprocate, but we do in the end of the day, if you give us a chance. So I implore everyone to include each other, because it's super important.